Hey, thanks for tuning in again today. I want to talk about two albums that are basically turning 40 years old here in 2025. I'm talking about Fables of the Reconstruction from R.E.M. This was the third record. This is the weird double-sided front cover where you can't figure out which way is up and if it's a top loader or what's going on. Definitely one of the strangest configurations out there. Yeah, anyway, this was when REM wanted to make a change. They did make a change as far as who was producing the record. They moved away from Mitch Easter and Don Dixon, who were heavily involved with Murmur and Reckoning. They went to the UK. They wanted to work, especially Peter Buck. He wanted to work with Joe Boyd, famous for, working with Pink Floyd, working with Fairport Convention, Richard Thompson, many others. Later on, he did some work with Robin Hitchcock. So, what we have here is a record that me listening to it recently, I pulled it out, and it's a Sterling cut. It sounds a little murky. It sounds a little lacking in bottom end. It still is a very nice sounding analog record. But I'm going to look at, there was a reissue in 2010. There's another reissue that just came out last year. I think it's maybe using the same cut from 2010, not sure. MoFi didn't do this title. They did several REM titles. This was still on IRS. There's a few different variants of this record. I've got the gray variant with the IRS guy on the very bottom, so the 6 o'clock position. The music here is fantastic, okay? So this was kind of a transitional record for REM. And this record is in the news today, especially because there is a tribute band out there right now touring, celebrating the 40th anniversary of Fables of the Reconstruction. The band includes Jason Narducci on guitar, John Worster on drums. Also joining them on bass is John Stirratt of Wilco. And what's happening right now, lead singer Michael Shannon and Jason Narducci, they teamed up and did a Murmur tour last year. And they're very, very talented. Michael Shannon brings something to the party. He's not just like phoning in a by rote, paint by numbers impression of Michael Stipe. He brings something of his own personality. He's a very good singer. You have to be if you're going to be kind of trying to sing these parts. But the interesting thing is, last year and again this year, they just left the West Coast. Last night, they were in Athens, Georgia at the 40 Watt Club. All four members of REM were there. They all came up on stage. I think it was during Pretty Persuasion. So the set list is pretty cool. I think they play Fables in its entirety, and they throw in some greatest hits, like a collection at the end, even a couple covers. They're even throwing in Toys in the Attic, which you can find on the comp that came out from REM. So I'm kind of jumping around, but pretty exciting to see REM on stage again last night at the 40 Watt Club in Athens. This is by no means nothing's going to come of this. There is a very recent podcast interview with Mike Mills, and he talks about his appreciation for this kind of, tribute band per se. It's pretty cool because Jason Narducci and John Worster, they are longtime touring partners with Bob Mould. When Bob Mould goes out and he wants to do an electric presentation of his solo body of work, and of course he will throw in many Husker Du covers, he looks to Jason Narducci, who covers bass for him, and then John Worster behind the drum set. So those guys, Bob Mould is touring this spring. He's going to be here in Fort Collins in April. I already have tickets. Looking forward to that. I am upset that this Fables band are not even coming to Colorado, because I would have gone to Denver. I would have gone to Boulder. I would have went up to Vail or Dillon if they were going to be up there, and they're not, unfortunately. So anyway, I'll catch Jason Narducci and John Worster in April with Bob Mould. Looking forward to it. This is a really cool record. I was talking about it being kind of transitional. They would move on to a bigger sound. They changed producers again. They started working with Don Gaiman and really boosted up kind of an arena rock presentation, a little bit of a left-hand turn for R.E.M. at that point in time. So Reconstruction is still the jangle pop. The Rickenbacker is still very much in play. The arpeggios from Peter Buck. But we get here on side 2, one of my favorite R.E.M. songs, Can't Get There From Here, and they're throwing in a little bit of funk. They're throwing in some horns, so a little bit of an R&B flavor. They did expand their sound a little bit with Fables, moving away, transitioning. So a good record. I was a little surprised. I haven't heard this in a while, and I wasn't really floored by the sound, but of course the music is fantastic. So I just wanted to talk about Fables, the fact that, this was originally released. When was this released? I think I wrote this down. June of 1985, and here we are 40 years, coming up on 40 years later. So the second record I want to talk about today, coming up on 40 years for this as well. It was originally released in September of 1985. The Replacements' Tim. This has been in the news because about a year ago, there was an expanded box that came out with a live show from Cabaret Metro in Chicago, I believe, and a jaw-dropping remix. I have not heard that yet. This was called the Let It Bleed box, and it included the remixed vinyl. I think there was a live show on vinyl, and then there were 2 or 3 CDs as well. I think it was retailing for $90 or $100. I didn't want all the extras. I was more interested in getting my hands on the standalone remix that Ed Stasium remixed, and apparently he did a fantastic job. So the original mix of Tim has long been kind of derided, sounding a little tinny, hardly any soundstage, almost having like a mono effect if you listen to this thing. Not a lot of clarity, and kind of a weird reverby effect on many of these songs, and kind of muddy sounding. So this new remix by Ed Stasium has been highly acclaimed. I'm looking forward because we're getting a standalone remix of Tim on Record Store Day coming up this April. So mark your calendars. If you're a fan of this record and you want to hear the absolute best version, I think we're getting that in April. So wanted to talk about that. So this record, a lot of people will point to Let It Be, but we still have Bob Stinson on guitar here before he left the band. And this is an amazing record. Westerberg is at his peak. all you have to do is listen to the last two songs on side one, and that will give you the essence of what the Replacements were. They were Westerberg having kind of his sensitivity on his sleeve, a kind of shambolic rock and roll band. Think about the Faces, think about late 1960s Rolling Stones, and that is kind of the makeup of the Replacements. So, Waitress in the Sky, Into Swinging Party, the last song on side one, even with the shitty mix of this original pressing, I will never let this thing go. But I am listening, but I am looking forward to hearing this with more clarity and separation. So, really exciting. Side two, Bastards of Young. In the middle of this side, you've got Left of the Dial. And then finally, Here Comes a Regular. Basically written about the CC Club in Minneapolis. If you have never been there, make sure you stop in there, get a draft of beer, and soak in the atmosphere. It has not changed at all since 1985. You know, maybe they have a different jukebox in there and a couple of video games. Who knows? But I was there several years ago and loved it. Tim, The Replacements, coming soon, the remix from the big box that came out over a year ago, a breakout standalone copy. I'm looking forward to that. That's today, kind of revisiting 40 years on, 1985. I was a freshman in college. I listened to both of these records a lot, and I still enjoy listening to them today. So there you have it. Hope everyone has a great weekend. Take care.